You're listening to On Mission with Dr. Matt Davis, a podcast designed to explore the personal mission of everyday leaders. Hear from men and women who are making a difference in their corner of the world and discover what keeps them on mission.
On Mission with Dr. Matt Davis, I'm Jonathan Sheely. Joining us today is Pastor Gary Walton, lead pastor at Harvest Ministries in Guam. Gary and his wife Faith live in Guam and have 5 grown children. In his spare time, Pastor Gary enjoys running and playing basketball and golf. His favorite meal is flank steak or island barbecue. Pastor Gary's favorite sport teams are the Minnesota Vikings, Timberwolves, Twins, and Minnesota Gopher basketball. Pastor Gary, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much.
Do you follow the Minnesota football team?
I do. Unfortunately, right now, it's a very difficult season.
He's a Chiefs fan.
Yeah.
Big time.
Do you guys want to thumb wrestle right now? I mean, it was a very difficult game over the weekend.
Well, and I was traveling, so I wasn't able to see it live.
Well, there was a controversy.
There is.
There was a controversy because at the end of the game, I think it was right at the end of the game, 3 penalties called on the Chiefs on the last play that would have brought the ball to the 1-yard line for an obvious touchdown and win the game type deal. And so the Vikings thought, surely we've got it. It was roughing the passer. It was pass interference. And then to argue the call, the Chiefs defender pulled off his helmet and started arguing with the official, which is another unsportsmanlike. So Mahomes comes out on the field and tells the official that the rusher hit the arm of the quarterback and touched the ball. So if he tips the ball, there can't be pass interference. There can't be roughing the passer. The whole thing's nullified. The officials huddle up. I don't think it went to replay. I don't think it's reviewable. And they said, yep, we're going to pick up those 2 flags. Now, the replay shows he did not get anywhere close to the football. He hit Mahomes, or he hit the Vikings quarterback, hit him in the head. I mean, it was a penalty. And they picked up the flags. The Chiefs win the game, and everybody goes, wait a second, what about the guy that took the helmet off in the end zone? Yep. I guess since he was right, that they agreed with him, they didn't penalize him for that one either. So there are certain conspiracy theories circulating.
Well, I find myself in this really interesting situation where prior to Mahomes' era, I was also a Patriots hater. Right.
For the same reasons.
Yeah, for the same reasons. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh, man, I'm on the receiving end of this now.
Well,
it's nice to be on that side.
Like, we're winning.
I'm a pretty avid fan, and a noon game here in the States is 3:30 in the morning, Monday morning in Guam, and I watch almost all of them. Yeah.
An avid fan.
Yeah.
My goodness.
So, but I did not. I was traveling, so I was not able to watch it, and I've gotten a couple of reports of it, but I actually didn't hear that sequence at the end. I knew that Vikings were
I'm
driving
not trying to stir anything up,
at the very end, but I didn't hear what happened at the.
They looked good.
Wow.
They looked
and
good.
the Bears won this week.
And I will tell you, okay. Go back to your
Might be
corner.
the only one. I got to celebrate when I have the chance.
It was one of those things where you see it and you go, oh, that was a momentum killer, if nothing else.
Yeah. Well, 1-4 is pretty tough no matter what.
Yeah.
No matter how you try to shake it.
That means the Lions are probably the odds-on favorites to win the division Central.
And that makes everybody upset.
Yes, it does.
Right. except those 3 guys that are still cheering for the Lions.
Tim.
We know a few. They're generally, they wear the paper bags around, on their heads.
Well, on our pastoral staff, we have the NFC North covered. We have Chicago guy, we have a couple Michigan guys, Minnesota, and then Wisconsin. So we really do have quite a rivalry going just on the NFC North.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
You guys watch the games together?
We try not to. No, they are 3:30 in the morning. We're not doing much on Monday mornings together at that time. Yeah.
Sure.
You get a knock at 3:30. Hey, you want to watch the game?
Yeah, right.
That's not a friendly thing.
No.
Well, we are excited to talk to you a little bit and find out a lot more about your ministry, your approach to life, and some of how that has interacted, what God's been doing. So maybe give us a little bit more background on what God has done through your life, kind of your general biography, so folks can get a feel for who you are.
Sure. Grew up in a pastor's home. My dad was a longtime faithful pastor in several different places, including here in Wisconsin. Felt from the time I was a kid, felt like God was calling me to ministry. I've told people I never wanted to be a fireman or a cowboy or anything like that. I always wanted to be a pastor like my dad. And God used that childhood desire, I think, to kind of grow in me a passion for the church and a passion for mission and living on mission. And just a confirmation through my high school years that maybe God was leading me to ministry of some sort, probably pastoral ministry. I was really burdened for that. So I went to Bible college, got married, just coming out of
Wisconsin.
Here in
Northland,
Wisconsin.
right?
I'm a Northland graduate, yep. And loved education there and mentors and all the influence of.
Who would have been some of your key mentors at Northland?
Well, Dr. O, of course, was there during that time.
Legend.
Legendary, and he's continued to be a mentor. Doug McLaughlin was both at Northland when I was there, and then I went to Central Seminary in Minneapolis at the same time that he was transitioning back and forth. So Dr. McLaughlin,
kind of like me again.
Yeah,
for both of you.
Yeah. So he's been a lifelong mentor. I continue to stay in connection with both of those guys. They've been friends and encouragement for me along the way. And then a guy named Marty Heron, who was at Northland for a long time, and then was at Harvest, and so was a mentor for me, particularly in college.
He immediately before you were the pastor there, he was the pastor.
Yeah.
So you kind of had to fill the shoes of someone that you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah,
that
exactly right.
He
was in Guam for 17 years, and then I followed. Actually, we had a very unique transition, which is I don't know that I've heard this anyplace else, but I actually transitioned into that pastorate on the same couple of weekends. So he called it, a change of command service. We actually had a service where it was sort of his last service and my first one. We were both there together. And he spoke, I spoke, kind of culminating his ministry and launching my ministry there. We left then for a week or so just to be away while the church said goodbye to the Herons, and then we came back. So, a day after the church had a big goodbye, we were back kind of in the saddle leading the ministry. So very unique transition.
But that's good for the ministry, because so oftentimes between pastors, a church will languish without anybody at the helm for a number of months or potentially a year or more.
Yeah. Harvest is a very unique place. Over the years, a lot of people have had connections with Harvest, and so there's some understanding of it, but it's a large ministry, a very large Christian school, pretty good sized church. We have a Bible college on our campus, training Micronesians for ministries, and has been effective for many years. So there's a lot going on. We have our 24-hour radio station and a very large, call it Harvest House ministry to foster care. There's just a lot of pieces happening on our campus. So, yeah, you're right, the ability to be able to transition smoothly. And also I'd say this, transition in a way where both Dr. Heron and I have really the same DNA. Some of the very same influences. He was a mentor for me, in college, and continue to just, really have so much respect for him. So to be able to, kind of DNA moving, and we're different, dramatically different, a lot of things, and ministries change. It's not like that. But to know that at the core of who we are, kind of the core foundation is going to keep tracking in the same way. That's been very healthy for us.
Yeah, for sure. All right. With that foundation, kind of the biography in place, Jonathan's going to hit you with a deep question here to really kind of center our conversation on that aspect of mission.
Okay. Do you have a mission statement and a mission for life?
I actually would say it this way. Over the course of my adult life, I've had 2 mission statements, and they've directed, I've never called them mission statements. They've really been more of primary focuses for a certain season of life. I didn't go about them to try to say, I want a mission statement for this piece of life. It just sort of happened, but I can look back now and watch 2 things that have guided my life very specifically and how it impacted a lot of different things. As I began pastoring, so I became a pastor. I was 28 years old, took the first church. Of course, young family. Faith and I had 5 kids, not all of them at 28, but 5 children. And I heard this somewhere, so it's not original with me. I really grabbed onto it, and it became sort of the focal point of the next, season of my life. But it's this statement: I want to give the best years of my life to the two things that matter most: my family and God's family. And man, when I first heard that, I was like, that's exactly what I want for my life. I've got a interest in a lot of things, but I'm a pretty mission-driven. I'm a fairly focused person, and from the time I was, in Bible college and seminary, I wanted my life to count. I wanted to invest it in the kinds of things that were going to make a difference in eternity. And so that resonated so strongly with me that it just became who I was. I mean, it just was something I started really trying to train into our men, a lot of young men in our church. But it really became, that theme for that part of life. Now, I've said this over the years. When I was 28, 29 years old, when I said I want to give the best years of my life, I thought the best years of my life were right now, right? The next 10 years.
You about that.
And when I hit, about 40, I was like, man, that wasn't the best years of my life. I got the best years of my life are to come, and now I'm in my 50s, and I feel like these are the best years of my life. So that's rotated a little bit with me. But no matter what, the idea of in this season, which I'm thankful, for the privileges and the opportunities, God's given me. I just want to make sure that I'm on mission, I'm focused, and that includes my family and God's family.
Well, that's a really big picture, kind of a statement. How do you use that to make decisions? Within the short term and even the long term. How does that go from conceptual down into action?
Well, I think really practically, because it was so clearly impressed in my being, I just feel like really every decision that I made was somehow impacted by that. So when you're trying to decide priorities, when you're trying to decide focuses, you're trying to decide what your direction is, that idea just keeps coming back. So what part of this do I got to make sure that is being invested in my family? Of course, if my responsibilities aren't taken care of there.
Well, your mission statement has some value statements built into it. And a different person might have different values.
Sure.
And answer that in a very different way in terms of the decisions that would flow from it. So what are the best years of my life? You mentioned that variable. But there's also this issue of, on the things that matter most. Well, to most people in the world, the thing that matters the most is them. Mm-hmm. And you alluded to, I think, another maybe unspoken element of that, and that is that I want my life to count for more than just me.
Sure.
So speak to how that's so different, that calculation is so different for a believer versus someone that maybe just doesn't even have that frame of reference and just thinks that life is all about them, and they want to spend the best, most productive years of their lives amassing wealth or fame or power, the motivators of this world, versus how that calculation is very, very different for a child of God.
We are naturally self-focused and self-seeking, so we all are, and everybody has to battle that. Whether you are a lay person in a church or whether you're leading a church, you have to battle that. I can look back, and you don't want to hear all the stories of all of my life, but I can look back on some very specific circumstances and seasons where, God had to make sure I was really aware that outside of even my intention, I was tracking a more self-centered, self-focused view of life. And sometimes God's got to, kind of cuff you on the side of the head to make sure that you realize that, hey, you got to go back to actually thinking again, what does really matter here? And particularly, I think that's important for, think about young guys in ministry. Yeah. You're busy. There's 100 things going on. I was leading a growing, vibrant church. And I really cared about leaving a legacy with my family. I came from a great family. My mom and dad were godly people. Their influence on my life was so significant. I wanted desperately to make sure that was a focus. And yet at the same time, there's a lot of things competing for your time.
Right. Good things.
Yeah, good things, absolutely. So you're constantly having to reevaluate that and find out where you're off track and come back to it and reassess it. But yeah.
So does an example come to mind of, when you felt like, I'm starting to drift a little bit, and there was some tangible way that you perceived that you were being redirected back in?
Sure. This is kind of I don't know if this is exactly the answer to your question, but
it's your podcast. I mean, this is your episode, man.
Well, it's a great story, no matter whether it answers your question or not, and it is related in some way. So, young pastor, God's beginning to bless the ministry. I'm all in. I'm there by myself. I went to a church about 65 people, and God really, blessed that ministry over the years. But I remember very specifically our first family vacation. So in the pastorate now, Faith and I, my wife's name is Faith, we're going to go on vacation. I've been going hard, at the dad thing, at the husband thing, at the church thing. I'm all invested. I really didn't spend a lot of time in my own personal, hobbies or anything. You're just busy. You got a lot of stuff going on. So I was tired, and we were looking forward to this new vacation. So I remember going to the library before we went on vacation and picking out some books. When I was in high school, I used to love reading sort of mystery spy kind of novels. I could get into those books, and I read them great. I hadn't read anything like that since I was in high school. I went to Bible college. I went to seminary. I got married. There's just no time to do that kind of reading.
Oh, by the way, before you go on with that story, do you ever tell your wife, like, this is the kind of thing you're into? And she says, since literally the entire time I've known you, I've never seen you do that. You still think of it as the thing you do. Yeah. But you realize, like, at some point when you get our age, it's like, you're right. I haven't done that in 20 years. It's still part of my core identity, but I know what you mean.
So I get these books. We go to a family from the church let us use their cabin, beautiful lake place. And I start reading, and I am a one-track mind kind of person. So I start reading, and I can read for hours. And in fact, I read for hours, and then it would get into the evening and get the kids to bed. Of course, you help with the kids, get the kids to bed, and then I read for a few more hours. I'm staying awake because I'm so into this book. And at about day 3 of vacation, I'm starting to feel a little bit of tension, with me and Faith.
It's the vibe.
We know it well. I just shivered.
Yeah. Every husband has it.
These single guys are like, I don't know what the problem is,
And I'm like, man, this is great. It's been 10 years since I've read a book like this. This is fantastic. And the tension is just growing and growing. And I mean, I'll not make this story too long, but I realized, by the time we're done, that this was a very bad vacation. This is not going nearly the way that I wanted it to go. But I thought the vacation was about me. I was tired. And Faith, of course, felt like we've got him 100% now for this week. And instead, I kind of checked off into my own thing. So actually, it was a good lesson. And from that time on, I know what a vacation's for. I've not struggled with it again. I'm not super smart, but I do pick up things, So, hey, I know vacation isn't about me. And actually, I can enjoy that then. Mm-hmm. I mean, I love my family. I love my kids. They're going to get 100% of my attention during that time. But it isn't going to be about me going to go golf or find a book to read.
Not until they're older and you can go with you.
Then it changes a little bit again.
That's the dream right there, buddy.
Hey, you know what? You can take a 4-year-old golfing.
I've
he
done
does
it.
A great job.
They don't drive the cart as well. You need to be careful about that. Just word to the wise. Driving over the bridges and things, you want to grab the wheel when they're doing that.
Well, I don't know if I answered your question.
No, that's good.
But it is directly connected with mission.
That's where the rubber meets the road.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And we all think we're balanced. We actually were talking about this earlier today. And everybody thinks they're balanced. It's the outside perspective that really helps us to know whether that's true or not. And when your values are faith and family, there's even tension sometimes between those priorities. But you've got to make some decisions beforehand about what you're going to do when confronted with those choices. And then you have much easier time in the moment of saying, okay, if that's out of balance, then it's not even a question. Of course, I give that up and I focus on what's better. And it's the long term, right? And that's what I think of it as living a life of faith is sometimes a very mystical sounding thing. But it really comes down to the practical decisions that we make every day, right? And some of those decisions are delaying instant gratification for a more eternal investment. And you do that every day as a pastor, but all of us have to do that every day. It isn't just the pastors that are engaged in the eternally significant work of a life of faith, right?
Well, in fact, this mission statement, I have been able to communicate, and I do this regularly to men in our church over and over again, because it's the same. This is not a pastor's mission statement. That if you really do get this idea that the most important things to me are my family and God's family. In fact, if I could just make a comment about that, the second part is just as important. And that it was very I'm a practical thinker anyway. That was a very practical way for me to actually have something that worked for me. And it was in very simple terms, and I'm a simple thinker. So this idea that the second part is, it's not just spiritual priorities. I'm going to give myself to God's family. I'm going to give myself to church. And knowing that what I invest in that place is actually also going to have a significant impact on my family. I want to invest in this place. One of the best things I can do for my kids is to be a part of a vibrant, growing, healthy church where they see God at work. If they see God at work week after week, people coming to Christ and growing in their faith and dramatic changes taking place, then as a child, God is real to you. And so everything that I can do to invest in God's family allows my kids to grow up in a place where God is at work. If God's at work, then he's real. And it's a huge, huge issue. And I'm sad for families that grow up in churches where that's not the case.
I grew up as a pastor's kid, and it was when I got to college that I met people who were upset about that.
Right.
It never occurred to me that being a PK would be a negative thing, because my dad had the priorities right. It was family. I knew that our family was going to get enough of Dad, that we needed, all of my dad that we needed. And he was a loving father, and he was invested, and he was present. But he was also creating the kind of church environment as well that we saw God working. Yeah. And I know that feeling as well in the ministry here. When I came to Maranatha, my boys were very small. And the thought always occurred to me, I want this place to be the kind of college that my sons will benefit from someday. Right. And now I've got one that's graduated and two here. And the thought is the same, only even more urgent, like, okay, is this the kind of college that will help prepare them? Right. And it keeps us sharp. Having our families involved in the ministry, it does keep you sharp. It keeps you invested. It's not a conflict of interest. It's the opposite. It hones your attention, and sometimes you find out things, and there's all kinds of benefits to that. Working and joining, it's not a separate domain. They overlap. And I think that's the point you're trying to make, is that if I'm successful in creating the right kind of church, it's actually going to enhance my family and my role as a father. In your position now as a senior pastor of a large, complicated ministry, are you involved in quite a bit of do you stay connected to the administrative part of that, or do you see your leadership more as the spiritual leadership and you just kind of delegate? What is your mode for that?
Yeah, both. I'm a shepherd at heart, and so that's how I'm wired, and that's where I lean to. But shepherding responsibilities are oversight and administrative. So I am my title is the lead pastor. And that it does include, technically it's a president of our school. Right. It's about 950 students. I'm the president. My role is a president of our college. And so I have the oversight responsibility. We've got a fantastic team. We've got an incredible team.
You got a lot of Maranatha grads over there.
We do have great Maranatha grads.
Give a shout out to those guys.
Yeah, we're very thankful for that. So we've got a great team in place. We got great leaders. God has provided for Harvest over the years in that way. But I'm wired as an administrator, in some ways, and so that part I enjoy it.
How do you balance all of that pressure and a demand for your time and attention with sermon preparation and the spiritual work of providing for the church family and being available enough for them as well? That's got to be just a huge job.
It is a significant challenge. Again, I know foundationally that if our church family, which then encompasses our whole ministry, if our church family is not well fed, ultimately the whole thing breaks down, right? There's no health that happens if we're not going to be fed. And I'm a big believer, of course, in the scriptures and in the power of the scriptures to change lives and to direct us. So I recognize how significant my prep time is for that. I'm a slow preparer, It
goes back to that single focus that you have, and I'm the same way of being sort of. I don't multitask well because I'm concentrating, and then I get distracted because I want to follow every little thread, and I don't know if you're like that too. But
well, not that so much, but it just takes me a long time. It takes me much longer than normal people that are preparing messages, particularly in a ministry like ours. So it is a challenge for me. I found it easier before to set aside. I do have to be very clear about the time that's set aside for that. But the reality is, actually, people really can't completely comprehend the amount of things that are going on at Harvest. But our office complex is a revolving door of all kinds of stuff. And I have a fantastic admin assistant. She protects time. And I'm very scheduled. I mean, I'm scheduled from early in the morning till late. And frankly, this would not be my ideal, but my Saturdays are gold for me for prep time. So most pastors, I know everybody just marked me off like, are you kidding me? You wait until Saturday? It's just the reality of what's happening at Harvest. Yeah. Saturdays, almost nobody's there. Right. And so it wasn't the way it was pre-Harvest, but it is how it is now. And I've got a lot of prep that's in, but I don't do anything else on Saturday. It's a full work day for me.
It's your final put the polish on.
I'm very, very careful about nothing else happening because I know I'm going to need that. I try to clear off a Thursday, and my assistant is great at doing that, but it's still there's just crisis after crisis that comes up.
Yeah, Thursdays are interesting for me too. It's my least scheduled day. And I always know something's going to happen. So I've got nothing on my calendar this afternoon. I've already had 3 people come to me this morning. Hey, you got a second? Can we meet this afternoon? And I hate it when people do that because then I start, my imagination is like, what's this going to be about? What are we doing here? But then it's usually just some random thing. But I know exactly what you're talking about.
Thursdays are supposed to be cleared off for prep time, but it is the only other space that I have. And that's kind of running,
that makes it the target.
It is. It's the only margin in the schedule.
Yeah.
And every week, there's just a need for additional stuff that you can't say no to.
You alluded to the unique challenges of a ministry like Harvest. And you're located on Guam, and that has a unique and historic significance. It's a crossroads of the Pacific. It's very significant in history, of wars and of territories and nations. And you have a mix of cultural and ethnic identities there that create those challenges as well. But you're here at Maranatha primarily here in the States at this time, I'm guessing, to recruit.
Right.
And you have a huge staff and always, the need to fill different roles. And so I want to give you an opportunity to kind of make the case for a ministry like Guam where you're going to give up a lot. This is foreign missions.
Correct.
And, I'm sure people get paid and, there's a service aspect to it, but this is missions. And you got a large Christian school, you're going to need a lot of teachers. You've got specialists. I mean, the Harpers are out there. Chris is a good friend, and we love seeing them and seeing their family grow out there versus when they were here in Watertown. And so it's a big change of pace. It's a big change of life. What's the pitch? What is it that you're needing, and what is that transition like? Because you've had to make that transition yourself.
We have 150 full-time staff. And in fact, our college students all are required to work 20 hours a week as well. So if you include those, we have about 65 college students. We have over 200 full and part-time staff. It's a lot. It's a big staff. Some local, but particularly in the teaching areas, almost all that staff is recruited off island. And it is a very missional place. I mean, the military calls Guam the tip of the spear because it's an incredibly strategic location right on the spear tip of the 1040 window. Frankly, that whole part of Asia, we're 3.5 hours from Australia, 3.5 hours from Tokyo, 3.5 hours from Manila. Oh. So you put us just right there in the middle. And we really see Guam as a launch zone in the same way that the military sees it so strategically. We see it in the exact same way, strategic, missionally, as a launch zone for all of those regions, and actually a support base. Harvest has had a significant influence in the Micronesian islands, all around there, primarily because of our Bible college. We now have nearly 400 graduates spread out all through those areas. I can go to any of those islands, and it's just funny, but you'll see Harvest T-shirts across the islands. We'll meet graduates all across the islands that connected with Harvest Baptist Bible College. So it's an incredible, strategically important missional base, and it is also, by God's grace, it's a really healthy church. So you have this location where, and it's fairly sizable. We run about 800 in a couple different services. Very multi-ethnic. It's a beautiful mix of people from just lots of different places. It's kind of a mix of three worlds. There's a little bit of a U.S. world. It is a U.S. territory, a lot of military on our island. It's a Micronesian island world, and it's an Asian world. Many Filipinos on island, but Japanese, Korean. Our school has a lot of Japanese and Korean students that are there really as an educational platform to get into, frankly, high-ranking colleges here in the States. That's how, many people. The
reputation of the school is so good that even unbelieving Japanese or Korean families want their kids in an American school on Guam. And is it easier for them to get to Guam, permissions-wise? And education?
So from the beginning, I mean, we're 40 years into the school. The school was intended as a mission base, so that you don't need a statement of faith to come. It's
an evangelistic outreach.
Outreach, and I wish I could tell you stories about that because God has blessed that phenomenally. I mean, the impact of the school over the years is just a really incredible thing. So we have families that move to Guam partially in order to put their kids, Japanese, Korean primarily, sometimes Chinese, to have their kids in Harvest in order to get the diploma, and also the education is fantastic, in order to be able to get accepted into Princeton and to Yale and to Stanford. So our graduates are in all of those schools, and it's a bridge for them to be able to get there through an American school. And it's close, so 3.5 hours from Tokyo or from Korea. So anybody that comes to Harvest, they do have to come with this missional heart, because it is, frankly, it's just not as comfortable as staying here in Wisconsin or wherever else it is. It's
sometimes of the year it's much more comfortable than being here in Wisconsin.
That is absolutely true.
I beg to differ.
and of course, we're not opposed to playing off of the beach, and
hey, use what you got.
We do have to do that,
of course.
And we're also really transparent with somebody that comes to say that's going to last you about a month.
Yep.
And then the reality of this cross-cultural ministry where you're out of your comfort zone and you're away from all the things that are comfortable, that is going to hit you. And then you got to find out if you're called. Because if God hasn't called you there, then you're going to be very discouraged and you're not going to be effective. You're actually going to be a weight, on everything. So we're really praying that, like we believe, that God is the one who's prepared laborers for the harvest. Our job, my job, and thank you for really giving me an opportunity to communicate this, but our job when we're traveling is to tell the story of harvest, because it's incredible. I can't imagine any place where God is at work in a more clear way right now than this happening on Guam. Anybody that comes there is blown away by what God is doing. So to be part of the vibrancy of what God's doing there is fantastic. And then to understand that we're having a real opportunity to impact the world right from that location.
The world's coming to you.
It's exactly right.
That's incredible. And it is a mission field, but they speak English. It's an American territory. You don't have to worry about visas and expirations on things like that.
Yeah.
The cost of living is dramatically different.
Yep. California plus, Hawaii plus. Yeah, so very expensive.
And maybe not, the amenities, the availability of all the different choice and things like that. But if you are the kind of person that wants to invest your life in where God is working and seeing eternal results, and you say, but, I want to be a Christian school teacher, or I have this particular interest. I mean, I think about Chris. Chris Harper was here.
Yeah.
He was our web and communications office, worked with the technology, helped us in a number of areas. We did Sunday school together and church, and so we got to know each other well. And the opportunity opened up at Harvest for him to be involved with your radio outreach.
Right.
Do you want to talk about the radio ministry a little bit?
Yeah, 24-hour radio station. Chris Harper and Deborah are fantastic. He is the radio station manager. And so we have people come that are part of that ministry as well.
But what's the reach of that?
It really is just Guam.
Okay.
We'd love it to be beyond that, but it is primarily Guam based on.
And is that like a gospel outreach? So you're broadcasting messages along with Christian music and all that?
Yeah, exactly. KHMG, you can find it, online as well, but KHMG, Harvest Family Radio, 24 hours broadcasting all across. A lot of local programming, preaching, and then, then we got some syndicated stuff that we pick up
Another
as well.
grad was Sebastian Basaljua. He graduated from Maranatha, went out, and he served out there for a number of years doing audiovisual work. He loves the digital media world and videography and all those things. And you have a great media department.
We do.
That's constantly, telling the stories. Like you said, I wish I could tell all the stories.
Yeah.
They're doing that.
They are, yeah.
And so here's a guy says, well, I have an interest in audiovisual and technology. Hey, you know what? You can use that to serve the Lord in a place like Guam.
We have 2 current positions that we're looking for, and we've got a lot of open positions. You can find it. We have a Go page. So if you get on Harvest Ministries, and you can find kind of our opportunities page, and it'll talk about a number of different things. But 2 things specifically, we actually have a need for it's a full-time videography position. The person that was doing it, just 10 years, fantastic, but felt like you need to come back for some family things. And so we have a huge need there. We actually have 2 positions in IT. We need an IT director for next year, filling in the summer and the fall. It's a big.
Yeah.
You guys can.
I can
can
imagine
tell what IT looks like in a organization that's the size of this.
Yep.
So it's a big job. We need somebody with some qualifications for that. I don't think we're going to find it locally, so we're recruiting for that. And actually, Chris is a really good example of this. Somebody just had a heart for ministry. God was using him here, of course, but God had prepared him. God had prepared him for Harvest and for the radio station.
I wasn't happy about it, but no hard feelings.
I can imagine. And, of course, Chris has filled in all kinds of other things as well.
Well, that's the joy of ministry, is that you can plug in all your talents and interests.
Yeah.
You'll find a way. God will find a way to use it.
Yeah. So if everybody's out there listening, like, man, I'd love to have a full-time videography position. We have a really incredible opportunity for somebody in the IT as well. We actually have 2 positions in the IT that we need to fill.
Praise the Lord. So one of the things that people get down about are the politics and the news cycle and the culture wars. And here in the States, there's not a lot of good news out there, and you can get a little depressed about all the headlines and see all those things. But one of the things that has helped me a good deal to get out of that, because I tend to follow that stuff enough to feel bad about it.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that'll knock you out of that funk is getting a glimpse of what God is doing around the world.
Yeah.
When you realize that God is not the God of America, He is the God of the world, of the universe, and He is accomplishing His will and He is actively working in places all around the world, some of which you may never even have heard of or given much of a second thought to. It just opens your eyes to what God can do in your own life as well. And I encourage young people all the time, go and explore, find these places like Harvest in Guam, where this ministry has sprung up. I mean, before World War II, nobody had ever heard of Guam, right? I mean, it was kind of not insignificant to the people that lived there, but it was this Pacific island. Yeah. And all of a sudden, in the last 100 years or less, it has become the crossroads for ministry, and it's a wide open door. And so what a great opportunity to partner along with what God is already doing. And people say, I want God on my side. Go be on God's side. Go join in. Say yes.
Dr. Davis, we have part of what we're doing here right now, we're recruiting as well for our summer ministry team, which has been something that Maranatha has participated in
Tell
significantly.
us about that.
I can't imagine a better summer opportunity for a college student than, connecting with the Harvest team. We usually bring on about 15 people, and most of them we're targeting ed majors. So we do something called Cool School. It's 4 weeks of summer school, sort of summer day camp kind of thing. And so we bring out mostly educators, and they'll have their own class. So this is kind of in training. They're going to have their own class for 4 weeks. International students, missional based. Very few of them would be believers. And then that's followed by 2 weeks of camp. So there's no other camps on Guam. So we run a camp, and we run a fantastic camp, actually,
Sure.
Pacific Rim Christian Camp. And so those teachers then become our counselors for 2 weeks. And then that's followed by a possibility or a potential or an opportunity for an actual missions trip to one of the other islands.
Oh, wow.
Yap, Micronesia,
Sure.
Yap, Chuk, Palau, one of those locations as well. Because of how this is all structured, the day camp actually funds the summer camp ministry and actually our ministry team. Our school families send their kids. They pay a tuition to come to that day camp. It funds the rest of us. So we're able to provide a ticket for our camp team to Guam and back from Guam, and then a small weekly stipend for 7 weeks ministry. You'll come, you'll spend a week of orientation with our team, and then involved in this day camp, and then 2 weeks of camp. It is a fantastic opportunity to get to see a part of the world.
Do you take old guys?
Hey, come on.
I'm not old, but I'm coming.
And actually, it's not all teachers. I mean, we are primarily looking for teachers, but every year we're looking for some other. Actually, frankly, right now we're looking for some athletes. Sports is a big deal on Guam, so particularly people that would have some volleyball or soccer or basketball background. It's a bridge connection with a lot of our kids on island. Mm-hmm. But teachers primarily, but we also, kind of mix it up with a few others that just have a heart for ministry. We'll almost always have a couple of guys that are pastoral majors, and they'll do more of a pastoral kind of internship and also being involved with that all summer. It's a fantastic opportunity.
Well, I've got some people I want to talk to about that opportunity. That sounds incredible, and that's going to do exactly what we just talked about, and opening eyes to how God can use those interests and abilities.
Well, the reality is a lot of our staff is populated by those that come out in that summer team. It's a pretty big jump to go straight from here to someplace that you don't know anything about. But if you get to Guam, I'm telling you, your heart will be inflamed by what God's doing. And you leave there saying, man, I want to be a part of a ministry like that.
Yeah.
And Harvest isn't the only place like it. We're thankful to be able to be training people for lots of other effective ministries across the states and other locations. But there's something special about what is going on in Guam. And once people get a little taste of it, there's some sense of, man, why would I want to give my life to anything less than that?
Well, thank you for your partnership. Maranatha definitely views Harvest as a ministry partner, and we have benefited both directions many times over the decades. And we're very thankful for you. When Dr. Heron left, there was concern. You know, what's going to happen to this ministry? The leadership is such a key thing in that transition. And what you've had to say today reflects the feelings that we all had at the time of, oh, good, they're going to continue on in the same mode. That doesn't mean that nothing changes and that we don't grow and innovate, but that the heart of the place will remain, and that the core values and that foundation that God's established is firmly there for the next generation of leadership. And I think these lessons we've talked about today are just so important and practical. And so thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your experience and even your time today. Thank you.
I don't know about wisdom, but I've enjoyed it very much. And we have loved the partnership with Maranatha. You're absolutely right. We have a staff that's populated by a lot of Maranatha grads, both across just the general flow, and then our leadership have just had a big part in Harvest over the years. So we're thankful for the partnership as well.
Amen.
Thank you for joining us today. On Mission is a production of Maranatha Baptist University. Subscribe to On Mission on Apple, Google, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Don't forget to leave a review, as this will help other growing leaders find these conversations. For information about our guests, previous episodes, and general information about On Mission or MBU, go to mbu.edu/podcast. Join us again next week as we examine what keeps leaders on mission.